Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. Today, we're continuing our series on Bard spells, talking about the higher level spells as we continue on. Today, we're talking about 6th level spells. This is when we have entered the 3rd tier of play. Characters have to be at least level 11 to get these. And this is when we start to get into the territory of spells that you only get to cast once or twice a day. Even at the very high levels of play, you never get more than 2 6th-level spell slots. This means that these spells have to be particularly powerful to be worth your incredibly high-value resource. Of course, you're level 11 now, so, you've got some pretty tough opponents to fight. This is when, the opponents start to become a little ridiculous. So the spells have to match. I've prepared a top 5 list. We've got my top 2 combat and utility focused spells, as well as an honorable mention thrown in there. Before we get to those spells, though, I'd like to let you know, Relaxed Fantasy Review has memberships. For just $1 a month, you can support me here on YouTube and get a couple benefits. You get a little badge next to your name in the comments, letting folks know you're a supporter. You get early access to my videos, you get access a day earlier than everyone else, and you get VIP access in my community Discord. If any of that sounds interesting to you, you can click the join button. It's just down there next to the subscribe button. And if it doesn't sound interesting to you, that's fine. Coming into the Discord is free for anyone. The general chat rooms are open, and I love chatting about D&D ideas in there. And honestly, just liking the channel, subscribing, those are the sort of things that cost nothing and are a great way to support me. So thank you for watching my content here on YouTube. Starting off with the number 2 combat pick for me, that would be the spell Eye Bite. Eye Bite is one of those spells that takes a lot from you. It takes a 6th level spell, it takes your concentration, and it takes an action every single turn. So it's gotta be pretty tough, right? Well, you force creatures to make a save, and if they fail, they can be affected one of 3 ways. They can either go unconscious instantly, which is kind of wild, actually. They can be frightened and forced to run from you every turn, and they can just be poisoned, with no limit on how long that lasts. The fear effect can be resisted if they run and get away from you far enough. The unconscious condition can be shaken out of them. But it robs a creature of so much. And because this is a concentration spell, you can keep doing this every turn. If a creature succeeds a save, you don't get to repeat this against them, but you can keep doing this to multiple enemies throughout the battle, constantly knocking people unconscious, poisoning them if that doesn't work. There are lots of options here. And Eye Bite is just one of those really cool spells, which if you want to dedicate your actions to your magic, this is a great debuff that will genuinely be a real hamper for your enemies. Your number 2 utility spell, on the other hand, is a much longer casting thing, Hero's Feast. A very famous spell. This is a spell that takes 10 minutes to cast and uses 1,000 gold pieces worth of resources every time you do it. It also takes an hour for the creatures you cast the feast for to partake. So this is something you have to do in a safe place, for the most part. But once creatures eat the Hero's Feast, I think it can feed up to 12, maybe 15. It feeds a lot of people. They get a buff to their maximum hit points, 2d10, so it's similar to the Aid spell in that regard. It also makes them immune to fear, immune to the poison condition, and resistant to poison damage, and all of these effects last for 24 hours. This is most definitely the thematic feast before the final battle. You'll do this before you go to the dragon's lair or the lich's castle or whatever, and it will make you significantly tougher. Immunity to fear is solid. Immunity to poison condition is great. Resistance to poison damage is good. And that extra hit point buff stacks with temporary hit points. So you're doing good things. It is one of those things you're not going to use all the time unless you've got all the gold and planning time in the world. But even then, I would be using this against most tough fights that I know are coming. So a really good spell. Before we get to the number 1s, my honorable mention is a utility spell, True Seeing. True Seeing is a really interesting spell because it actually is really cheap. I mean, it costs a 6th level spell slot, that's not cheap, but it only costs 25 gold pieces worth of material. Weird for a high level spell. When you use it, it lasts an hour, no concentration needed, and grants a creature, which can be yourself or someone else, True Sight, out to 120 feet. That's the kind of True Sight that, like, archdevils and demons get. This is the kind of power that, allows you to see through illusions, see through transfigurations, see through darkness, see through basically everything. And 120 feet's a great range. True Seeing isn't always going to be useful. A lot of the time creatures aren't using illusions on you. But the fact that you can do this and just bypass all sorts of combat tricks, dungeon illusions, and an hour with no concentration is a nice duration. You can get through a whole dungeon in an hour if you really work at it. So yeah, a nice honorable mention. The number 1 spell for combat is Otto's Irresistible Dance. Some people might think this is a weird one and might say, well, iBite's probably better, but I like Otto's Irresistible Dance for one reason. It has a fail case. You cast the spell, it forces a save, it lasts a minute with your concentration. If a creature succeeds the save, they still spend their next turn dancing in place, using up all of their movement to do so. Which isn't a whole lot, but for melee enemies that can be pretty debilitating. Even a legendary resistance won't stop this, it'll just make them succeed. But if they fail the save, which is what you want, they have to do that dance for the duration of the spell. They have disadvantage on their dex saves, all of their attack rolls, and attacks against them have advantage. It's a super strong debuff. They do get to repeat the save on their turn, if they use their action to try. Meaning that not only do you have a nice fail case in case the creature succeeds their save, now they can't move for a turn, but also if you succeed, you're robbing them of their action economy. They have to try to break out. It's not just something that happens on the end of their turn. I think that the fact that this has such a powerful debuff and a fail case makes it better than iBite. Obviously, the variety of iBite could make it better in a lot of situations, not to mention that Otto's Irresistible Dance does rely on charm, and the charm condition can be resisted at high levels by a lot of creatures. But I love this spell so much, and it's so thematic for a bard, making people dance, I gotta give it the number 1 spot for combat. However, what I'm going to say is that the next spell, although I call it a utility spell, it actually is the best 6th level spell in the entire game, regardless of your class or situation, and that is, of course, Mass Suggestion. Mass Suggestion works in combat, it also works out of combat, it works basically all the time, and it is, if you can only pick one 6th level spell, this is the one you want. Mass Suggestion lets you target a dozen creatures. They all make saving throws, and you then suggest a course of action to them. It's gotta be 25 words or less. If they fail to save, they have to do that course of action for the next 24 hours. The course of action has to sound achievable, so you can't tell them to do something impossible, and it can't obviously harm them or their allies, but other than that, you can tell them anything you want. Walk down the street and help villagers farm their crops until sundown. Or, now is not the time for fighting, now is the time for sleeping, lay down everyone and nap. These are reasonable suggestions that don't obviously harm anybody. And because it lasts 24 hours and no concentration, Mass Suggestion just ends fights. You don't have to fight everyone if they're running away to save their homes from an invader that doesn't exist. What's even more cool about Mass Suggestion is that when you upcast it, the time goes up. You can cast it at 7th, 8th, or 9th level to extend it from 24 hours to several days, a month, or even a full year and a day. Oh yeah, with a 9th level spell slot, Mass Suggestion lasts over a year. No concentration, you just tell a creature to do something and they'll do it, even if it means that they go to the beach 16 hours a day and count grains of sand, and then spend 8 hours a day eating and sleeping, and then repeat. They'll do that for a whole year until the spell ends or I guess you die. Either way, Mass Suggestion is stupid strong, works pretty much most of the time on most creatures. And yeah, it's good in combat, but it's great out of combat too. You could cast it on a gang of bandits that you're doing, a negotiation with, and get them to work for you for a long time with no way for them to resist it if they fail one save. Crazy strong. Mass Suggestion is famous as 6th level spells go, and with good reason. It is just as powerful, if not more so, than it used to be in the old days, and I cannot give this anything but the number 1 spot. And that's it. If you're a level 11 bard trying to figure out what spells to take Mass Suggestion. Then take Otto's Irresistible Dance or Eye Bite, Hero's Feast, and True Seeing for specific situations. If you know they're coming, they're good to have. All in all, 6th level spells really are game changers. So, yeah, I hope that helps. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below. Have a look for the join button down there, and keep your eyes peeled for more spell reviews coming down the line soon. Have a good one, my friends.